We're back live here on The Beat. Joe DioGuardi's live from New York, CPA, former congressman, and author of Unaccountable Congress. Anybody would like a copy of Unaccountable Congress, just email me. My email address is at wmyt1067fm.com, and we'll be glad to put aside copies. We still have some copies left of his book, Unaccountable Congress, so please do that. Joe, I'm sorry I cut you off there. So the financial statements were delayed. They used the excuse of the shutdown of the government.
Right.
How accurate are they? And tell us.
Let me tell you, start right from the top. That's a good point.
Really.
You know, the nation's top auditor is the head of the now called, it's the GAO. It used to be called the Government Accounting Office. Now it's the Government Accountability Office, and he's the Comptroller General. He's the top, you might say, auditor/accountant. He's not the chief financial officer. We have that because of my bill in 1990, and we have one for every major department and agency. But he is the guy that we expect, and it could be a gal someday, but we expect him to sign off, just like we would have expected Price Waterhouse or Arthur Anderson, because we don't have independent audits, but they call these independent financial statements because of the Comptroller General, who, by the way, does have a 15-year term, so he can't be fired, can only be impeached, but he's still not independent of government. He signed it, but he said that he can't give it a clean opinion because of the books of the Defense Department. They're in such poor shape, and that comprises such a big part of the spending of the $3.7 trillion that we spent in that year.
I mean, but because even in the past, there's billions of dollars they can't account for, right?
That's one part of it, but it's not just that money that got lost when we sent it, like the $8 billion in cash, that we sent to Iraq, and it got lost somewhere on the pallets. No, it's worse than that. It's systemic. It's the fact that the books don't balance in some of the armed services, and they just can't locate, major expenditures for equipment. They can't locate the equipment. You don't know. It's a mess. I remember this when I was back there. So you may say, Joe, what's the answer? I mean, the answer is now to bring in some outside experts that know what they're doing, get this job done. We can't wait till 2017, which is what they're saying. It's ridiculous.
This is beyond belief. And like I've explained to folks, when I was at Lockheed in the corporate, I was in Lockheed Corporation, so we were just the corporate structure. And they never would tell us, but twice a year, I believe it was twice a year, people would just show up in my department. And at that point, I had to just leave. And you leave your drawers open and you leave all your paperwork, and then they audit you. It's called the Internal Audit Department. And that's because of government requirements.
Right.
And it's amazing. I mean, I can't imagine what you just said. I'm sorry, I can't get my head around that we have departments of this government with people who on average are paid twice what people are paid in the private sector, and yet they can't keep their pennies and dollars straight. They don't know where money goes. They don't know where their equipment is. I mean, Joe, how many years ago did we start putting little labels, inventory labels, on every piece of equipment? 30 years, 40 years ago?
Right, and now we have computers that track it. In fact, they track it on what they call a theoretical basis. In other words, they don't count anymore. They realized that we got such sophisticated systems, they have to be checked from time to time, that you can now keep it, by computer, so that at the end of the year, what is left on your computer should be there. And most of the times, I'd say all of the times, unless your computer is screwed up, it's there. Because when you sell something, then you have to not only put the cash in the drawer and take the debt off the books, you got to then say, well, let me take that piece of equipment out of the inventory. We don't have it anymore. We sold it. It's as simple as that. Well, apparently that's not being done. But let me get to the bigger picture, Curtis. I just did another article. I sent you an original draft probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just got the word it's going to be published on Monday in Roll Call. Roll Call is that prestigious thing that gets around Capitol Hill. All the congressmen read it, all their staffs, and the lobbyists, sure. And you know what the name of it is? America has 2 debt ceilings. And this is what I have to say in order to get people's head around this big problem. We have the statutory debt ceiling that we just raised, $17.3 trillion, but we have another one, $75 trillion, and that's the moral debt ceiling that we have for the next generation, where there's no limit. We have a limit on the cash basis, one, 17.3, and you got congressmen running around saying, hey, you guys, you already, ran up the bills for this, so you got to now sell these bonds to get the cash to pay the bills. Well, guess what? They just made our case for the accrual basis. They're using accrual basis logic and words to justify raising the cash basis 17.3. But when are we going to limit the 75 trillion and more going on against the next generation? And the next generation I'm talking about are people not yet born, or if they are born, they're not voting. So as I said on one of your shows before, we're back to Thomas Paine, taxation without representation, and the Tea Party. The Boston Tea Party took care of King George III.
Yeah.
The current Tea Party hasn't yet made that mark. And before your show ends, I need to give you a quick picture, because guess what else came out? President Obama's budget for the fiscal year, September 30th, 2015.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine? And guess what it does? Just quickly, I'll tell you. It adds $55 billion in additional spending for the fiscal year 2015 alone. And the national debt, grows $25 trillion by 2024 under Obama's proposed budget. But you know what it does? It abandons Social Security reform, makes no mention of reforming Medicare, and it fully funds Obamacare in spite of his ratings going down. So what is it? It's an election year budget in an election year. He doesn't care.